Think about the concept of home. It is not merely a structure of wood, brick, and glass. It is not just an architectural space designed to keep the rain out. For centuries, across every major civilization, the home has been the ultimate physical manifestation of human sovereignty. It is the fortress, the perimeter, the one definitive place on this crowded earth where the rules of the outside world stop at the front door because the space inside belongs entirely to you. Historically, property ownership was the absolute dividing line between a citizen and a subject. To own land, to own the roof over your head, was to possess a tangible slice of reality that no king, no government, and no corporate entity could casually take away. It provided a foundation, a stake in the future. It gave you the leverage to say no. But look around you today. Look at the shrinking horizon of the modern middle class. You are being told a lie. You are being told that the inability to buy a home, the crushing weight of rent, and the evaporation of savings are just temporary glitches in the macroeconomic cycle. You are told it is a result of post-pandemic supply chain issues, or transient inflation, or bad local zoning laws. It is none of those things. It is the successful execution of a deliberate macroeconomic shift. The powers that be, the architects of our modern global economy, are not banning private property. Banning property causes revolutions. Banning property forces people into the streets. That is clumsy. It is loud. Instead, they are doing something far more elegant. They are simply making it statistically, mathematically, and systematically impossible for you to acquire it. They are quietly pricing you out of sovereignty. And here's the twist. There is a specific date when the concept of middle-class property died. And it is not the ominous year of 2030 that everyone talks about. It happened over 50 years ago in a closed-door meeting in a hotel room in the woods of Maryland. August 15, 1971, the Nixon Shock. On that day, at Camp David, President Richard Nixon unilaterally severed the United States dollar from the gold standard. With a single stroke of a pen, he decoupled money from physical reality. Prior to 1971, money was a receipt for human labor, backed by a finite asset. After 1971, money became debt. It gave central banks the infinite power to print fiat currency out of thin air. And what happens when you print endless money? You trigger the Cantillon effect. To understand the world today, you must understand this effect. It states that who is closest to the source of money creation benefits the most, while those furthest away are destroyed. When the central banks print trillions, that money flows first to the financial elite, the big banks, and the hedge funds. They use that fresh money to buy up hard assets before the rest of the world even knows it exists. By the time that money trickles down to your paycheck, its purchasing power has already been hollowed out. Since 1971, human productivity has skyrocketed due to technology, but real wages have flatlined against inflation, while the price of finite, tangible assets, like land and homes, has climbed into the stratosphere. Inflation is not a natural disaster. It is an invisible tax used to confiscate your labor and transfer it to the asset-holding class. But economics alone cannot explain why we have accepted this fate so passively. To understand how you are being dispossessed of your future today, we first have to understand how you were trained to love the process. Welcome to the Great Transition, the shift from ownership to access. Over the last 2 decades, we have undergone a massive psychological reconditioning. It started innocently enough in the digital realm. We traded our physical DVD collections for Netflix. We traded our CD collections for Spotify. We surrendered our local hard drives for the ubiquitous cloud. At the time, it felt like an undeniable upgrade. Why take up physical space in your living room when you can access the entire catalog of human entertainment for $10 a month? This was the birth of the asset-light economy, but it did not stop at entertainment. It bled into software, into transportation, into the very tools we use to build our lives. Corporations transitioned from selling products you bought once to software as a service. You no longer own the Microsoft Office suite. You no longer own your Adobe design tools. You rent the right to use them, month by month, in perpetuity. If your credit card declines, your tools vanish instantly. Your ability to work is revoked. This was a masterpiece of social engineering. The rent-seeking elite realized something profound. True, generational wealth is not generated by selling a product. Once a product is sold, the transaction is over. True wealth is generated by inserting a toll booth between a human being and their daily existence. Comfort is the ultimate anesthetic. The convenience of instant access hides the absolute vulnerability of dependency. We were systematically taught to view ownership as a burden. Maintenance, storage, responsibility. Why deal with any of it when you can just subscribe? We traded resilience for convenience. We clapped like trained seals as the chains of perpetual tenancy were slipped around our necks. Now, apply that exact same psychological conditioning to the housing market. Enter the institutional landlords. Following the 2008 financial crisis, a crisis engineered by Wall Street greed, millions of middle-class families were foreclosed upon. They lost their homes, their savings, and their dignity. And who stepped in to buy the wreckage? The very financial institutions that caused the crash. Using zero-interest rate policies provided by the Federal Reserve, private equity firms and mega-asset managers like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street gained access to virtually free money. They took this infinite liquidity and began swallowing up single-family homes at an unprecedented industrial scale. Look at the mechanics of this transfer of wealth. A young couple saves for a decade to put a down payment on a modest starter home. They go to an open house, only to find they have been outbid by an all-cash offer from a corporate entity sitting 3,000 miles away, paying 20% over the asking price, waiving all inspections. You cannot compete with Wall Street's printing press. It is a rigged game. But why are they doing this? It is not just about the rental yield. It is about total capture. When a massive fund owns the neighborhood, they control the rent. When they control the rent, they control the inflation of your baseline survival. They use algorithmic pricing software to artificially inflate rents across entire cities simultaneously, ensuring you can never save enough to escape the rental trap. But deeper than that, they control the data. In a hyper-connected world, the smart home is a surveillance node. Your habits, your energy usage, the exact times you come and go, all of this is integrated into portfolios of risk assessment. You are no longer a citizen living in a community. You are a yield-generating data point in an asset manager's quarterly prospectus. You are livestock in a financial feedlot. This brings us to the 2030 blueprint. We have all heard the phrase, heavily popularized by the World Economic Forum. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. It is often dismissed as a conspiracy theory, but it was not a secret plot leak from a dark web server. It was a published essay. It was a proudly stated, predictive scenario of exactly where the global macroeconomic system is heading. The abolition of property is not being presented to you as a hostile corporate takeover. Instead, it is being sold to you as a moral imperative. Look at the language of the circular economy. Look at the ESG mandates, environmental, social, and governance scores. We are constantly told that private ownership is inherently wasteful. We are told that the carbon footprint of individual property, of individual cars, of individual washing machines, is destroying the planet. Therefore, for the greater good of humanity, you must transition to a shared economy. You will not own a car. You will summon an autonomous, corporate-owned pod. You will not own appliances. You will lease them from the manufacturer, and they will shut off if you exceed your monthly energy quota. Sustainability has become the perfect Trojan horse for the elimination of the middle class. If they can convince you that owning things is an environmental sin, you will police your own dispossession. You will walk willingly into the pod, believing you are saving the world, while the rent-seeking elite fly private jets between their sprawling, privately owned estates. What we are witnessing is not a leap forward into a highly evolved, progressive utopia. It is a regression. It is a violent snap back to the darkest periods of human history. It is the dawn of Neo-Feudalism. Consider the medieval peasant in 12th century Europe. The serf did not own the land they worked. The land belonged exclusively to the lord, the aristocrat, the sovereign. The peasant was merely permitted to live there, provided they paid a heavy tithe, a rent, to the master. The serf had no equity. They had no wealth to pass down to their children. Their entire existence was conditional. If they angered the lord, they were exiled. Strip away the high-speed Wi-Fi, the glowing smartphone screens, and the seamless food delivery apps, and the structural economic reality of today is practically identical. We are rapidly returning to a society of lords and serfs. The lords are the corporate monopolies and the central banks who control the issuance of currency. The serfs are the perpetual renters, the gig economy workers, the subscription slaves who must pay a monthly toll just to exist in the modern world. You are a digital sharecropper on the vast estate of big tech and Wall Street. But the medieval serf, despite his crushing poverty, at least had the physical reality of the earth beneath his feet. He could hide in the forest. He could trade in physical coin. The modern serf is facing something far more totalizing. You are facing the digital leash. The end of private property is inextricably connected to the implementation of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, programmable money. Unlike physical cash, which is anonymous, a CBDC allows the issuer to track, trace, and dictate every single transaction you make. Now, combine programmable money with a society where you own absolutely nothing. If you do not own your home, if you do not own your vehicle, if you do not even own the software you need to perform your job, your entire life is no longer a right. It is a license privilege, and licenses can be revoked in a microsecond. If your social credit score drops, if you express the wrong political opinion online, if you refuse to comply with a new mandate, the state does not need to send armed police to your door. They simply turn off your access. Your smart lock changes its code, locking you out of your rented apartment. Your leased electric car refuses to start. Your digital wallet freezes, preventing you from buying groceries. When you own nothing, you have zero leverage against the machine. You are entirely, helplessly dependent on the continuous goodwill of the very institutions that stripped you of your assets in the first place. You are a prisoner in an invisible cell built out of convenience and digital compliance. This is the bitter truth we must face. I will not offer you false hope. There are no easy solutions. The financialization of everything is a juggernaut. It has been gathering terrible momentum since the gold window closed in 1971. It was heavily accelerated by the bank bailouts of 2008, and it was permanently cemented by the catastrophic inflation of the 2020s. We must understand a fundamental, undeniable philosophical reality. Freedom is inextricably linked to property. You cannot separate the two. They are two sides of the same coin. Without a physical, tangible stake in the world, without a place that is yours, without assets that you control, liberty is just a theoretical concept. It is an illusion maintained by the people who own the infrastructure you rely on. When you own nothing, you are not a free agent in the world. You are merely a guest, and a guest can always be asked to leave.